a guy who hung him up, I think, just recently. I was going to say, when I say I think, I was going to say I think a little too early. He's an Ottawa native, a team he might have an affinity for, the Senators. We talked about earlier this morning are off to a bit of a tough start, but I want to pay tribute to this guy. He's been a class act. His name's Adrian Aucoin, and he announced yesterday that he's going to hang him up after 17 seasons. Adrian, thanks and welcome to the show.
All right, thanks, Brian.
And I'm delighted with Andrew Wolf and the guys at the PA for arranging this for us. I guess I'll start it off by asking you, I mean, this time comes to so many of you guys I've had a chance to talk to in my broadcasting career. Was it a tough decision for you, or was it time?
You know, it was time. I was lucky, obviously, to have an extended career. I think I've told a few people over the last few months here that the last 4 years were kind of a slow retirement. After I signed a 4-year deal with Chicago, I was 32 going into that contract, so I figured if I played till 36, I would have been ahead of the curve. And I was lucky enough to sign a 1-year deal in Phoenix. Thought that might be my swan song, but with Tippett and Dave Maloney putting that team together, and playing in front of some Vezina caliber goalies for the last few years, I've been lucky enough to just keep extending it, and then going to Columbus last year, coming in as just kind of a mentor to the young guys, and playing that role was certainly a great way for me to finish it.
Talking about Tippett and Phoenix, when you look at the standings in the West, I mean, there's 4 points between first and 8th spot. Obviously, it's tremendous there. But a lot of people, and you won't be one of them, are surprised to see Phoenix and where they are standing at 4th in the league right now out there.
Well, definitely not surprised. I think if you look at any team right now in hockey, goaltending is always, one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
Clearly, Mike Smith is, like I said, if not, as a candidate, he's always up there for sure. And they just play such a smart game. I mean, the one thing I loved about playing for Tip is that he always let you know what your role on the team was. There was never really that question mark. You had some guys who'd come in and thought they might have been first-line players, as you see all the time in the NHL, and it doesn't take them long to realize, geez, maybe I'm a better second liner or a third liner, and that's how I'm going to help the team. And ultimately, when the team does better, everybody does better. And guys really seem to accept it in that room.
The voice you hear is that of Adrian Aucoin, who's hung them up after 17 seasons. Adrian, he is highly recommended when I'm in discussion with McLean or Kipper, the guys over at Sportsnet or wherever else. They always talk about Dave Tippett, and guys who've been in the league, I have not, obviously, always nod their heads and say, this guy is a really great coach. What are some of his strengths?
Well, he is beyond dedicated to the game. I've never had another coach that's that professional. He is big on stats, video. I mean, he doesn't overkill the video, but I think he likes to watch video. He has different stats for every, basically, situation in the game. And he says it's not the be-all, end-all. He just wants you to know when you're playing well, offensively, defensively, puck possession chances, and he has stats for all of that. And he just likes to throw it out there just so you know, and it's not like he's going to put it in your face and say this is why you're playing bad or good, but it's just he uses every possible tool that he has at his fingertips, and ultimately he just has, an ultimate respect from the guys.
Adrian, you fought your way up through several leagues, but for those who don't know, I'll bring it up. I know you get asked all the time. My apologies therefore. But a little tidbit about this guy and his career is that he scored on his first shot in the first regular season game. He scored on his first shot in his first playoff game, and on your first shot in the All-Star game. I mean, there's guys out there. I mean, Dave Clarkson plays for the Leafs here. Every day he goes to practice. He's played 10 games. When are you going to score? When are you going to score? You got that out of the way in a hurry.
Yeah, no, I was lucky. It's actually one of my buddies over at the NHLPA, Devin Smith. He's the one who figured that stat out and threw it out there in a hurry over the last couple months. But I was truly blessed, like I said, with my whole career. But to come up the way I did, it was just kind of the last game of the year, post the first lockout, and they were just resting a couple of D-men, and I got in the game and got on, and Cliff Ronning kind of set the whole play up. And then my first playoff game was Game 7 against St. Louis. I got in because Jeff Brown was injured. We actually played with 7 D-men. Same thing, got on the ice, Cliff Ronning at center again, kind of said, hey, let's play give and go. I'll say up for a one-timer, and then the All-Star game was kind of a fluke. I just followed the play up and poked in a backhand, and it was kind of special because I think at the time it was Messier's league-leading assist for the All-Star game. But every, like you say, I guess I never really looked at it as getting a monkey off my back because it happened so quickly, and I guess I was lucky because of it.
Before I talk to you about what you're doing nowadays, for all the fans who are watching out there who want to know, you played, and it's always interesting because I don't get to speak to that many guys that have done it, as part of the Canadian national team program. You went to the Lillehammer Olympic Games back in 1994. That program is pretty much long since been ditched. But tell us a little bit about that program for people who are too young possibly to know now, because they're used to seeing the pros go to the Olympics. Guys like me who have been around for a long time remember back to the amateur days, but that program back in 1994 was somewhere in between, right?
Yeah, correct. We had I was one of the younger guys, like myself and Paul Correa and Todd Warner were the real young guys on the team. And then we had a lot of, kind of, I wouldn't say ex-pros, but pros that had played a little bit in the minors, maybe a little bit in the NHL, and then were either trying to get to Europe or just at that stage in their career where they might have been finishing off. So I think that's what made the 94 Olympics so special, is it was really like, the Stanley Cup or the pinnacle for most of the guys on that team. And, a lot of these guys clearly would never ended up having, amazing NHL careers. So that was the top for them. And it was just an amazing program. I think it was such a good gateway for guys to go play in Europe, or it was a great way for guys to end their careers. And it was a good way for young guys like myself to actually just get a lot better and use it as a stepping stone to the NHL. And, it's kind of sad that that we can't keep that program going. I know it costs a lot of money, but it was an amazing thing, and so many players benefited from it.
Well, you talk about three guys that could skate. You, Warner, and Korea, not bad on the big ice surface over there.
Yeah, I don't necessarily put myself in the same category as those two guys.
Well, I know. I mean, you're being very modest, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, there was an interesting show on last night. Bob Costas interviewing Bobby Orr, and we all know how Bobby Orr could skate, obviously. And he talked about guys that copied him in their careers, and he said he obviously had a very strong effect on Paul Coffey's career. And Bobby said he thought Paul Coffey was the greatest skater of all time. I guess you could argue several guys were in that category. Who were some that you played with?
Well, I would definitely put my first partner in roomie up there, Brett Hedican.
Yes.
It was just absolutely effortless for him, and it didn't come. It looked like it came easy to him, but I've never seen a guy work harder, on and off the ice to try to be the best he could be. And he taught me a lot in my young career. And then just playing against Scott Niedermayer for all those years, and he was actually my partner in that one All-Star game, and it just blew my mind every time. And I honestly think he could have been, as good, if not really close to Bobby Orr, just because it was that effortless for him. And he just was so smart, so strong on his feet. It's almost like when he put his mind to it, he would just take that puck, carry it down the ice, and something would happen every time.
Just before I go off the topic and wrap this up with you, Adrian, just remind me about the gold medal game in 1994 at Lillehammer, because you guys won the silver that year. Yeah,
that was the shootout goal by Peter Forsberg.
Yes, that's right. Damn, I should have remembered.
Yeah, we went into that tournament. I think we were probably ranked like somewhere between 6th and 8th out of all the countries. We had, looking back at it now, we had some pretty good players in like Korea and those guys, like I mentioned earlier. But we didn't really have the teams that some of these European teams had, because of course at the time the Olympics were still the biggest thing in the world for everywhere in Europe, and most of the best Canadian kids were in the NHL.
Yeah.
And we just played great. Our goalie Corey Hirsch stole a few games for us, and I believe we were leading going into the third period, and then we had a penalty. They tied it up, and then going to the shootout, Forsberg, pulled a great move. And I always heard the story how the coach wanted Mats Naslund to take I think it was Mats Naslund to take the shot, and he was too nervous. And Forsberg, the 20-year-old kid, was like, "I'll take it," and he, pulled a move out of the hat, and
bit of a controversial move as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was still a shootout, which was, pretty new to over here in North America, so it was different for us. But we had our chance. We had some good chances to win it as well.
Adrian, I'm not going to ask you to pick out your best memory, because there's so many over the great career you've had. I know that you feel like you've been blessed. You said it in your release to realize your childhood dream. The question I have been asking everybody on the show today, and like to keep the thread going, is, and I was, what brought this on to me when I was thinking about it last night before I did the show today, Adrian, was Cristiano Ronaldo, who, he went into Sweden last night on the biggest stage of all. And with Portugal in trouble of making the World Cup, he scored a natural hat-trick and won that game by himself for Portugal. Now they're in the World Cup. And I thought, I've been so lucky in my lifetime to be alive when greatness has been around me. I think of Muhammad Ali, for example. You know what I mean? You read about Babe Ruth and Joe Louis, but we weren't alive to see it. And I think of so many other great guys, Gretzky and Michael Jordan and all the rest. If I ask you the same question, as you've been on this earth and alive, guys that have been around you, whether it's bands or politicians or sports people, is there a couple of guys that come to your mind and you think, boy, I'm lucky I was around to see those guys play?
Well, absolutely. Gretzky would be a no-brainer playing against him. I remember getting phone calls from all my friends back home in Ottawa when I did play against him, and it was just it was kind of, I wouldn't say surreal because it's still the game of hockey, and I'm going to play him as hard as anybody that I've played against. But it was just it was neat to say because truly, with my career and as much hockey as I've watched, he was the best player that I've ever seen. Another one, just playing in Vancouver with Mark Messier. Yeah. I learned so much from him and leadership, and that's not to say that a lot of other guys I played with haven't been great leaders, but he was one of those guys that never really questioned himself because his intentions were always good. And he just had that aura about him. We'd walk into a restaurant in Carolina when they were new in the league and nobody knew any hockey players, and everybody in that restaurant would know who he was. He just said there was something about him that would just made him special. And I think, going away from hockey, one of the neatest things I've done is I've met Garth Brooks and worked a lot with his charity and stuff, so I know him personally.
Really?
And he's come to Long Island when I was there and Calgary and performed in front of our teams, and he gave me one of his guitars just as a thank you, and it was something that I'll always cherish.
Well, you've done it all, Adrian. World Junior Championships. You win the gold medal there in '93. You talked to Lillehammer, captain of the Blackhawks. Played with everyone. You're well respected in the league. Everyone I've ever talked to about you always tips their cap to you, and congratulations on an unbelievable year. Let everybody know what you're up to these days, because quite often when guys get out of the spotlight, people want to know where they are.
Yeah, well, we settled back in Chicago. I've kept my house here since my playing days with the Blackhawks, and we came back here this summer, and I got a call from Stan Bowman, and he heard that we might be moving back and asked me what I wanted to do, and seeing how I have 5 young kids and a wife who's had no time off, I thought, I'd definitely put my family ahead of my career, which I've tried to do as much as I can. But he, offered like a player development role and make up my own schedule. So I go help out in Rockford, which is only about an hour away, and work with a lot of the young D-men. It's actually been really good. So I think it's worked out well for both of us.
On behalf of everybody who's been watching this as we broadcast it around the world, Adrian, congratulations, as I said, on an absolutely outstanding career, and I wish you all the best and happiness with your wife and your family. You're with a good group now there. That Chicago Blackhawks, since Rocky Works took it over, has really turned things around. I know Phil Esposito is a regular here with his GM show, had all of his years there, and guys that have gone back to the fold, like his brother and Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita, have been welcome. So you're in with a good group, and Scotty and Stan Bowman, what more can you ask for there? All the best, Adrian. Thank you for taking the time to join me this morning. I really feel honored.
All right. Thanks so much, Brian.
All right. Take care.